With the karl-anthony Towns trade, the New York Knicks may very well end up in the NBA Finals. Now, a little peek behind the curtain here. At the time of this recording, this trade happened about 12 hours ago, and you're not going to see this until about 2 or 3 days before the season starts. But I just had to talk about it now because this completely changes the outlook of the Knicks season entirely. And I don't want it to seem as if the Knicks were going to be bad by any stretch of the means without karl-anthony Towns and with Julius Randle. But I think there was going to be some pretty significant limitations to what that roster could have done. Obviously, Jalen Brunson was probably going to put up another All-NBA caliber performance. Dante DiVincenzo was probably going to provide some of that outside scoring and the defensive versatility aspect of it. And then even more defensive prowess, you would have had Mikal Bridges, who you just traded for like a month or so ago, which was a really good pickup. And you extended OG Anunoby, which by all means is like home run swings for the New York Knicks. And at that point, prior to this trade, I really didn't see another way that they could improve on the roster, but they proved me wrong yet again. Some of the hiccups come with what Julius Randle was. He was probably going to miss the first part of the season at minimum, and Mitchell Robinson is also going to miss some pretty extended amount of time. So the start of the season for sure was kind of bleak, and I still believe that the Knicks were going to be like a top 4 seed in the East. I just didn't know what they were going to be able to be with what they had. But this Cat trade changes literally everything for the Knicks. Some of you may know that I am a Celtics fan, and while we're supposed to have rivalries with New York and Toronto and obviously the Lakers, I have watched basketball for so long that I can dislike a team but still appreciate what they are going to be and who they are and all those kind of things. So when that Cat trade ran across my timeline from Shams, I got a little uneasy as a Celtics fan because last year was obviously kind of a walk in the park for us. Obviously, we had some injury help to help us along the way. Didn't face a completely healthy Cleveland Cavaliers team. Tyrese Halliburton went down in the conference finals. So, like, we didn't necessarily have the toughest route to go through that Eastern Conference Finals and then going into the finals. We were just overpowered compared to the Dallas Mavericks. But now, if we can get a healthy version of this New York Knicks team with karl-anthony Towns, they're probably going to give us a really good run for our money. We have undeniable superstars. We have stretch bigs. We have defensive menaces. Like, that series, if we ever get to it, is going to be so, so good. And I think the thing that intrigues me most about the Knicks roster now is that there is a lot of defensive versatility, 2 through 5 at minimum. Because, again, you have Mikal Bridges, you have OG Anunoby, you have Josh Hart, and now you have karl-anthony Towns. And while Cat isn't like this defensive monster that people will expect, like his former counterpart Rudy Gobert, to be, he's not a slouch necessarily, and I'd have to imagine that playing in New York, playing somewhere so close to where he grew up, would have to give you some sort of pride in your defensive ability. And on top of the fact that OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges are absolutely not going to allow him to be a slouch on defense. Mikal, Josh, and OG can switch 2 through 4, and Karl can play the 5 or the 4, and everything would be completely fine. This New York Knicks team is going to be very, very good. If I were to nitpick at anything, I think that they did lose some of their depth. I think we all know how Tibbs likes to run his basketball teams, 5 or 6 guys, 7 guys, 45 minutes a night. I'm not sure how sustainable that is really in the long term, but with this roster specifically, it is going to get a little bit hazy when it comes to who's next outside of that starting 5. Obviously, you have guys like Precious Achiuwa, Mitchell Robinson when he does come back. Cam Payne is a serviceable backup point guard. You have Marcus Morris. You have Jericho Sims who could play spot, 5 minutes. The biggest thing for me, I think, and again, I may be a little biased because I am a West Virginia fan, I think the biggest piece for that bench unit is going to be what Miles McBride can be for this upcoming season. I wrote an article at the end of the NBA season. I'm going to link it down in the description if you're curious, giving my opinions and who I think deserved awards. I created my own set of awards because I don't think the NBA awards are specific enough. And what I called the Up Next award, someone who I think could take a really big leap for the next season, was Miles McBride. You saw what he could do in the playoffs, especially in the first couple rounds there, where he could provide shooting, outside shooting. He could provide, obviously, great on-ball defending and decent playmaking in lieu of a point guard or in a backup role. Because of everything he did last year and what he could be this year, and the fact that you're not going to have a super deep roster in New York, I'd have to imagine that Miles McBride gets a lot of shine this year. And I think the bench unit goes as far as he goes. Back to the starting unit, I think that the karl-anthony Towns trade obviously made this New York Knicks teams a little more difficult to guard because of his ability to stretch the defense. And what's really important for the Knicks is the timing of this. Obviously, Julius Randle probably wasn't going to start the season, so you were going to be without a power forward or center at minimum. But because Mitchell Robinson is also going to miss some extended time, Karl can play that 5 spot. He did it before in Minnesota before Rudy got there. He was able to take your defensive center hub all the way out to the 3-point line and cause a lot of problems for the defense. And when Mitchell Robinson does come back, you can slide Karl to the 4 and everything would be fine. So at that point, when Mitchell Robinson comes back, your starting 5 then looks like Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Mitchell Robinson. And that's really difficult to cover. Obviously, because of the lob threat that Mitchell Robinson is, the stretch threat that Karl-Anthony Towns is, the 3-point shooting ability and the defensive versatility between Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, and the absolute superstar that Jalen Brunson is. This is, again, going to be a very good Knicks team. This may seem sacrilege to a lot of New York Knicks fans, but this Knicks team, with everything that I just described here, is probably going to be the best Knicks team, certainly since the Carmelo Anthony Knicks, and maybe even further beyond that. This may be a top 3 New York Knicks team ever. But again, all of that is super dependent on how healthy does everybody stay? Does Tibbs run them into the ground? When do we get Mitchell Robinson back? And do these other bench pieces, especially the veteran pieces like Cam Payne and Marcus Morris, do they step up and eat innings during the regular season so the superstars can take over in the playoffs? What did you think of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade? Let me know down in the comments below. Check my other links while you're at it. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. See you tomorrow.